Alright, so this is just a quick video to show you how to work with sort of scanned illustrations or typography or any sort of thing that you've done by hand. Some nice and simple things that you can do in Photoshop. So you can see here I've got a book cover design. This was text that I'd drawn out with a fine liner by hand, nice and quick, and then I've made it into sort of a finished design in Photoshop. So you don't always have to start from scratch. If you're a confident sort of designer using hand-drawn or hand-written elements, then this is the technique for you. So I'm going to sort of hide all of my fancy layers so you can see where we started. So this is what we started with. So this was a scan of my typography that I just drew in fine liner. Now you can see it's not perfect. We've got some little flaws here where you can see sort of my pencil drawings. The first thing you want to do is go to your levels. So I'm just doing Command L, or you can go to Image, Adjustments and Levels. Now you'll see here we've got sort of three adjustments that we can make, and what these tend to do, and I won't do too much on this one, is increase sort of the contrast. So your whites will get whiter, your darks will get darker black, and then that middle one sort of mediates in between the two. So generally you can use these tools to sort of get rid of any of those imperfections or flaws that you don't like the look of. So you want something that's very high contrast. It saves you having to cut the background out most of the time. So it saves you having to like magic wand any paper or shadows or anything like that out. Obviously when you work with stuff by hand, you want to scan it so that you're not getting any shadows or any lighting in there, so it's nice and flat, and then it makes it a lot easier to work with like this. So I'm going to click OK on that. Now you can see it's not perfect. So I'm going to just use my eraser here, and again I can edit the size of this, and I can edit whether it's a hard edge or a soft edge. So I'm just going to go in and just neaten up those little bits that I don't want. Now you can see I've gone over there, so I'm just going to do Command Z, and I'm just going to come back out of that. Nice and simple. Obviously I've done mine as quite bold lines, so it's a lot easier to see where the mistakes are. Depending on what you've done, if you've done any sort of shading or tone, this might be a little bit more complicated. So you want to make sure that your design is sort of ready before you scan it, to minimise how much editing you're having to do in between. Now you can see I've not actually written out the whole name of the book here, so I've been a bit cheeky and I've gone, well, I've already done an N, so I'm just going to reuse that N, and I've already used an E, so I'm just going to reuse that E. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my polygonal lasso, and I'm just going to zoom in so I can get it nice and close, and then I'm going to sort of split up the N from the rest of the stuff on the page like that. Make sure I've got that layer selected. I'm going to copy and paste that because I know that I need another N in Frankenstein. I need another 2 actually, so let's have another one. So I'm going to pop that there, and then I'm going to do the same with the E, like so. Now depending on what you're doing with your image, you might be cutting it out of a background and making a repeat pattern from it, so it might not be typography that you're working with. And I just want to make sure before I copy and paste that I'm on the original layer. So I need I, E. So again I'm going to get this I, copy and paste that, place it next to the E. And then I want an S, which is behind there, so I need that S. So you might be working with an image or a pattern that you've made, so you might be copying and pasting and rotating and playing around. So you can make patterns from sort of simple things that you've drawn. Obviously I'm working with typography here, so I'm just spelling out what I want to spell. So there's my S, and I need my T from under here. So it's a bit of a slow process. Obviously if I've cheated a little bit here, so I could have just wrote out the whole word, but it's been lazy. Once you've sort of got all the parts that you need, then you need to decide, well, am I going to magic wand the background out, or am I just going to go with the flow and see how it goes? Now either is fine, there's no right or wrong here really. It just depends on what you want to do with that. So I need my T down here, I need my S up here. Obviously you're starting to get lots of sort of interesting layers going on, so you want to think about the order of your layers, how things are looking, Obviously you can see I've pulled across a little bit there that I don't want, so I'm just going to erase that out and just neaten that up. Obviously if you named these layers sort of the letter that they were, that would help you to sort of figure out what's going on. If you've got sort of repeat patterns and you've got lots of different objects, you might want to group or link them together to make things a little bit easier for yourself. There we go. So now it says Frankenstein. If I do Command minus and zoom out from there, now obviously you can see my original behind that. So I'm just going to take out the bit that I do want from the original, because that's the only bit that I do want. The rest I've already copied and pasted. Like so. Same again, and then hide my original. So there we go. So now I can group all of these. So select with Shift, and then you can do Group From or Command G to group them. And I've got that. Now, if I put a black background on there, you can obviously see how horrendous that is. You can see where I've rubbed it all out. Awful. Now, you might be able to get away with, so if I show you a colour other than black. See, I've gone for a pink. Sometimes you can get away with not having to change anything. So there you go. So if I go to multiply or colour burn or any of those sort of things, obviously that one doesn't work, but that one does. That one takes it white. So you can get away with not having to cut the background out. So sometimes by just applying it over the top with one of these layer blend modes, you can just cheat the system and you don't have to sit and cut all the backgrounds out. Obviously, it depends whether it's going to work for you. It depends how you want to use the thing that you've made. So you can see here I've got pink background in. If I wanted to do something a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go back to my white background and I'm going to select my group of text here. Now you could merge this, so if you don't want to do anything to the composition and you're happy, you could select all of these and merge layers, and then it's one flat image. Now I want to think about, well, do I want it in black? So maybe not. So maybe I go to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and then our good old friend Colorize. And then you can see, if I take the saturation and I take the lightness up, I can change the colour of those lines that I've drawn. So this is one of the bonuses of working in black and white. If you work in black lines to start with, you can make it whatever colour you want. If I'd have done this in a green fine liner and then scanned it in, I'd have been stuck with green fine liner, and I've only had the option of doing green fine liner. So I can change this to whatever colour I want. I am going to go for some crazy bright green, I think. Take my saturation right up. There we go. Now if I then put that over a coloured background, so obviously not pink. So if I go back to my black background, now you'll be able to see that when I put that on normal, we've got a horrible white background in there, and there's probably very little that we can do actually with a black background that's going to make it sort of do what we want it to. So this is where you might have to take your background out. So if I show you how to do that, if you've got this merged all as one layer, you might be able to magic wand it. So you can see I've got magic wand. Now it's not taken the inside of the layers, it's just selected all of the white that's connected. You can see I've got a tolerance here of 32. If it's not quite getting all the white that I want it to, I need to put it up. So I need to go for less tolerance and less picky, so select more of the white, please. If it's selecting areas that I don't want it to select, I need to take it down. So I need to go more tolerance, please, be more picky. I want you to be more picky about what's going on. If I actually just wanted to get rid of absolutely all the white, so if I just undo that, then if I untick this, it will select that colour and everything else that is that colour in the image. So you can see when I do it now, it gets rid of everything. So Command D to get rid of those wiggly lines. Now there we are, so that's looking a lot better now. So already I've got something that's quite interesting. Obviously if you wanted to play around with your backgrounds a little bit more, you could do, you know, white text on this background. You could try the opposite way around, so black text on a green background, etc. What I'm going to do is show you how to make sort of funky backgrounds like this. So if I go and make a new layer, we're going to work with gradients. So whenever you work with a gradient, you either want to put it in a box, so like a selection, and then put it in there, or you want to put it on its own layer. So I'm going to go for greens, and I'm going to go for sort of that one, But I'm going to make that black. So going black to green, and I'm going to make that a bit brighter. Okay, and then I'm going to go for this one where it sort of does it as a double. There you go. So we've got a sort of funky background on there. And then what I can do to this now, so I'm actually going to just change it up a little bit more. I'm not quite happy with that. So I'm going to add green, and then I'm going to add another one by clicking there and change that back to black so I get more variety. And then if I go like that, it's a bit nicer. Now I'm going to play around with this. So I'm just going to play around with my filters and my distort filters. So I can do things like twirl, zoom out. So like that. I can do things like wave, and you can edit these wavelengths and sort of see what's happening on the image. So I quite like that. And I'm also going to try ripple. So you just want to play around until you get something you're happy with, and then think about how this interacts with that background. So what happens when you change the text? And how does it engage with the things that are behind it? So how can you change the way that interacts? What kind of things do you get? What kind of options do you get? And what's really working for you? So nice and simple. You're obviously organising your image that you've taken in, whether it's text, whether it's patterns, whether it's textures, whether it's little doodles that you've done or drawings. Changing the levels, so getting a really crisp, clear scan. Cutting it up, rearranging it, whatever it is that you need to do with it. Cutting out the background if needs be, or you might just be playing around with those blend modes, so that might work for you. You can see obviously I've played around with lots of different things here, so I've got different examples of text that I've made, so one with a paintbrush, one that was done on the scanner that was sort of ripped up. Again, I've applied the same sort of thing to these here. And really it's about getting something that you're sort of comfortable with. What I've done here is I've actually made it feel a little bit more hand-drawn. So you can see these sort of textures here. These are just a paintbrush. And then I've gone into my brushes window and I've chosen something that feels a little bit sort of chalky. You can go directly into brushes and go for dry media brushes. So I've gone for something that feels a bit handmade, and then I've just put it on the layer in the background and coloured it in. So I've gone for something quite simple, but I wanted to add a little bit more of a hand-drawn element. So hopefully nice and easy. Scanning working, changing it in Photoshop, playing around with backgrounds, playing around with colours. You can do this with simple line drawings or simple line text. It doesn't have to be anything complicated.